Marvin been in prison all these years for something he did not do.
I believe that that man is factually innocent, and I think the evidence shows that.
It seems like there was a culture of, if it's a high-profile case, we have to get somebody, and we have to get somebody now. Evidence be damned.
As the trial was going on, we're thinking that Marvin's finna get out of jail eventually because there's no evidence. Marvin steady telling us like he don't know what's going on, so we're thinking they're gonna do what's right, and they never did.
Marvin is yet another unfortunate young African-American man who was hemmed up by this system for something he didn't do.
It's time to free him, man. And I'm being honest. I'm not just saying this. I've been saying this for years. He is innocent, man.
In 2004, 16-year-old Marvin Haynes was charged with the murder of 55-year-old Randy Sherer. Sherer was fatally shot during a robbery attempt of Jerry's Flower Shop in North Minneapolis. Despite no physical evidence linking Marvin to the murder, coerced testimony at trial, and Marvin's incessant claims that he was innocent, he was convicted in 2006 and sentenced to life in prison. As part of Unicorn Riot's series, The Case of Marvin Haynes, this video features interviews with Marvin's sister Marvina and family investigator Robert Johnson, along with police footage from 2004. We visited Faribault Prison, where we heard from Isaiah Harper, who was Marvin's cousin and was a key state witness against Marvin. He shared with us how the Minneapolis police threatened and coerced him to lie on the stand during Marvin's trial.
I had to say things that wasn't true about somebody I really care about my cousin, somebody who I'm like this with.
We also heard from former Minneapolis police officer Sarah Sorella and the founder of Communities United Against Police Brutality, Michelle Gross.
My name is Marvin Haynes. My brother Marvin Haynes has been wrongfully incarcerated for the last 18 years. Minneapolis stole him from my family at the age of 16.
The date of the incident was May 16th, 2004 at approximately 11:30 a.m. to about 11:50 a.m. When he got first picked up was on the 19th, while they still had him in custody, before they even brought him over to JDC, because he was asked to go to the juvenile detention center. He wanted to be brought back there as soon as his interview ended. They held him at the police station until they could get the warrant and go search his house. He would refuse to let him speak to his mom that day. That was the 19th of May, 2004. About 1900, 1930 is when the interrogation ended.
So be it. If I were you, I would not let somebody else speak for me.
I ain't did nothing, man.
Marvin, this is your one and only chance to straighten it out.
Okay, y'all take me back to JC because I ain't did nothing.
So you're telling us that you straight up a cold-blooded killer?
I ain't telling y'all that.
That's what you're telling me right now, dude.
No, I'm not.
You're a straight up cold-blooded killer. That's what you're telling me.
Can you take me back to JC then, man?
Yeah, we'll take you to JC. No problem. Sit down.
I don't want to talk no more. I'm being silent. I don't say nothing else.
And then they held him there. 21:30 is when they went to his house.
The way that we found out that they was charging Marvin with first degree of murder and second degree assault is they came and raided our house with a search warrant. And the news people were outside already without my mom even knowing where her son was. If you watch his interrogation videos, we do have those up on his website, Justice for Marvin Haynes, 16.com. It is a little long, but be patient and watch the whole thing. You'll get a whole understanding of what took place in that interrogation room with Marvin.
Hello, sir.
You know.
Now I'm Sergeant Keith Inspector Manson. Your name is what, Marvin? Marvin?
Yeah.
What do you go by, Marvin?
Marvin. Little Marvin.
Little Marvin? All right.
He has no idea, by the way, he's sitting there. No idea.
I'm gonna have my mom down again.
Your mom?
What am I here for anyway?
Well, because right now you're in custody. You got arrested for that warrant. You understand that, right? That's what the police arrested you for. And we want to ask you some questions about some other things. Your name's come up in the investigation. That's what we want to talk to you about.
You let my mom know what's going on?
Okay. Now, when did you say was the last time you fired a gun?
I ain't never fired no gun. I said I held the gun before though. I don't even know what you're talking about. I did.
But let's forget about what happened. I'm just saying, this is where you were at. This is right where you were at in the flower store, right?
right? You came out of the flower store, you went right up through here, you went in the alley, right to here. See, how would I know that, Mark?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
How would I know that, Mark? Come on now. You told me to keep it real with you.
I don't want to talk no more. Can I talk to my mom? I want to talk to my mom. Cause I'm gonna tell her what y'all trying to do to me. And I ain't never hurt nobody, and my mom know that.
He's a juvenile. He's sitting there without any representation, especially his mother, a parent. They should have stopped it as soon as he asked for his mom. He's 16 years old. He's not an adult.
Yeah, if you go back to see his original interview, and now that interview lasts, the first part of it is about just over an hour long. Towards the end of that is very telling, and he maintained his innocence throughout it. He had no clue what flower shop they were talking about. He thought they were talking about some flower shop over on Penn. His story, in fact, is the only story of all the witnesses that has not changed, that has maintained the same.
If you've never been in this flower shop, why would your fingerprints be found either in there or on some things inside there?
They're trying to confuse him.
A card, a little card. I don't know, I ain't never been in there. I know if
how would your fingerprints get in there then if you've never been in there?
I don't know. I don't know how my fingerprint. I don't even be on Marvin in there like that.
Interrogation techniques, when the read technique supports lying to the supposed suspect. Yeah, your fingerprints were there. Just dirty tactics.
In the interview that they did with Marvin, and they were yelling at him saying, "We know you did this, here's the reason why you did it. You knew there was illegal gambling going on. There were high stakes gambling going on in the back. You knew that, and I'm telling you, it was a fact."
I ain't never been in no flowers.
No, straight up.
I don't even go around. I'm going to flower shop for it.
I don't know, Marvin, but straight up, because I heard I've already heard that there was some heavy shit in there, and I think that's maybe why.
Some heavy what?
Heavy cash.
And
yeah, I heard they were doing some shit in the back room, like maybe some gambling, some big money, some big stakes gambling on in the back. That's what was going on there.
Well, that's about the only thing during that interrogation they said that was accurate. Because we went and looked it up, and sure enough, Gerald Sherer in 1995 had a previous conviction for illegal gambling. And Marvina found out that the lawyer, his name was Minneapolis Jim Meehan from the World Series of Poker. The guy who used to wear the cowboy hat, almost like the crocodile guy.
The actions on Minneapolis Jim Meehan was a 9-4 offsuit. Now says Rays. Well, you were talking about how these guys got to loosen their game up. Maybe he was listening.
And it was an accident, then it's an accident. And we think that's what happened, Marshall.
I know y'all here to help me.
I know.
Something would have happened, I would have been...
Well, that's what happened.
They're not there to help
you. I believe that's what happened. I think it was an accident, and things just didn't go as they planned. And unfortunately, you're in kind of a bad situation right now.
This flower store, it's called Jerry's Flower Shop. There was a robbery. Man got killed, all right? You know that.
I promise.
No. Don't. Let me talk for a minute. You just let me talk, all right? All right. We know what happened. We know who was there, and that was you, okay? And we know where you went after.
I ain't never even did nothing like that. Yeah, I ain't finna throw my life away for no little stupid stuff like that. I ain't did nothing.
Let me ask you something, Marvin. Marvin, have I been fair with you? Have I been fair with you?
Y'all ain't being fair with me. Look what y'all trying to say I did.
Yeah, straight, Marvin, listen. Okay, this is your opportunity. We have people telling us that you were inside there.
Well, how y'all gonna have, I got proof where I was at.
That's where you want to leave it, dude? You have your opportunity to straighten things out. I know I would. Shit. Hey, Marvin, well, we tried. Don't blame me, do it yourself, dude. Don't blame me, do it yourself.
They crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, God,
No
dude,
shit, they're crazy, Marvin. Fucking. It's shoddy police work. Really shoddy police work. I'm amazed at his composure, actually. For being a 16-year-old kid, he has a lot of composure under that amount of duress from, two grown white men throwing accusations that he killed someone. I give him a lot of credit for having that kind of composure at 16. But overall, that's shitty police work. It's unethical.
Man, I don't want to hear that shit, dude.
Hey, you know what, Marvin? I know you didn't mean for it to happen.
Man, I ain't getting that, man. What the fuck you get?
Marvin.
Man, y'all trying to say, man.
Marvin, sit down, sit down.
I don't want to talk about it no more, man. Y'all trying to do something, dude. I ain't even did nothing.
We're trying to get it straightened out. We know.
I'm telling y'all, man, I ain't did nothing, dude.
We know it was an accident, Marvin.
That accident, I ain't even got no gun. How I'm gonna hurt somebody?
Marvin, you did have a gun. You did have a gun.
I ain't never had no gun.
Yeah, Marvin.
And so by the time we talked to Marvin, he had already been certified and sent over to Hennepin County Adult Jail, and he was sitting there calling out. He was so confused, crying. He didn't know what was going on.
On the 20th, they got a warrant for an Inperson lineup. And if you watch the video from that, again, that did not follow the procedures that Dr. Nancy Stieble of Osberg wrote. It was her pilot program. And Amy Klobuchar and Judge Caligari also were at that time with the Hennepin County's attorney's office, and they helped write the procedures that were being done. They called him out by name. There's so many different problems with just the lineup, the Inperson lineup, let alone them calling him by name.
Number 4. Go on in, Marvin. Stand right there. Stand right there. Look straight at the window. Turn to the right. Turn back. Turn to the left. Turn back, face the window. Look straight at the window and show your teeth. Okay, close your mouth and repeat after me. Don't move. In a loud, demanding voice, repeat after me.
Don't move.
Where's the tape?
Where's the tape?
This is no joke.
This is no joke.
I want the money.
I want the money.
No till.
No till.
I want the money that is hidden here.
I want the money to here.
Okay? That's it, Marvin. Okay, you're done?
That's typical Minneapolis bullshit. When you give just a little hint of that person sticking out, the witness is gonna say, yeah, that's him. It doesn't surprise me, but it pisses me off. It really, really pisses me off seeing that, because it's so blatant.
And he's the only one called out by name. Mm-hmm. He went from the lineup to then being certified and having to go in front of a judge. In June is when he actually had his first court appearance. And then June is when they had the grand jury indictment. And then that following fall is when they went ahead and had the trial.
When that happened, it tore our family apart. There was a lot of blaming going on with the parents, a lot of choices that had to be made. We paid for Marvin to have a lawyer, which took all of my parents' savings, and we eventually end up losing everything, and my parents split.
How he ended up being convicted is just completely a mystery to me. I mean, other than the fact that the police, did everything they could, and the prosecutors to railroad him into the prison. I think this guy is factually innocent.
The fingerprints did not match. The DNA did not match. They had nothing. And in their own arguments at trial, they had nothing connecting him to the scene. The only thing they had was jailhouse testimony by a whole bunch of teenagers whose initial contact with the police was not reported or recorded.
The witnesses, first of all, were unreliable because they gave completely different descriptions of him. This was a young man, he was 16, I believe, at the time. Big hair, natural haircut, and the witnesses described a much taller man, like a 6-foot-something man. It had like short cropped hair or even, buzz cut hair. And here's this young man, with a big, large natural afro and very dark skinned and 5.5 feet tall, 5'6", something like that. Short guy, little guy.
Another one of the witnesses became a high-style witness on the stand, and they cried and they screamed and they told the judge, I don't know anything about this. They're making me say this. They stopped the whole trial. They took him to the back for 40 minutes. He came back out with tears in his eyes, crying. They wouldn't let him speak. He had to answer yes or no. No words, just yes or no. And they lost the tape of whatever happened in the back.
So I was a child then, so it was like, at first, I still wasn't going, They had to lock me in the cage first, threaten me and shit, put me in locked up with grown-ups. And finally I said what they wanted me to say. But even when I got on the stand, I told the truth. Even before I got on the stand, I tried to tell the truth. And for years now, I've been trying to tell the truth. That it was all coerced. Marvin never told me he did that. That's not even his character. Marvin's a player, he's a ladies' man. He don't do no shit like that, you know what I mean?
Taking a witness off the stand, bringing him to another room and coaching him by the police or the prosecution or whoever to coach that person on what they're saying and then bring him back to the stand is what I would call such an irregular procedure that in and of itself should have resulted in the case being thrown out. That is the kind of manipulation that no judge should ever have tolerated. And, we've got a problem. There's some very good judges in Hennepin County, but there's a lot of very poor quality judges.
When they paused that to take him out back, they actually ended up having to give him immunity. His immunity was only valid if he said the story that they wanted. If he didn't, he was gonna get charged with perjury and thrown in jail.
They questioned me multiple times without a recorder, cutting off the recorder. And then when it came down to the last time, after they locked me in the jail cell, threatened me with jail time, that's when he told me to say what he wanted me to say. And that's when I finally said, all right, I'll say it. That was the final statement. That was the final conversation that they put on record. And that was when they told me to say, I was at home, I got a call. Marvin told me that he killed the man on the corner at a flower shop. Then they wanted me to say that, we was at Muffy house, and Marvin was like, I'm finna go up here to the lake, I'll be back. And it went from there. They was throwing out numbers, 30 years, 40 years, shit like that. Saying if he get life, you get 30, all this shit. They questioned me multiple times after that to make sure that I stuck to that. And after that, I kept saying that it was coerced. I was told to say what was said, and that Marvin never told me that he did that. It was some of the worst experience because I had to say things that wasn't true about somebody I really care about my cousin, somebody who I'm like this with, you know what I mean? That's a man I'm with every day since we was kids. Since I was able to walk, since I was able to talk, you know what I mean? So his mom was my favorite auntie, so I was always at their house, so it bothered me a lot. And then with this underworld where we live at, I'm labeled as a snitch for all these years because I was forced to say something. I was coerced to say something. Even in the grand jury, I tried to say the truth. They wouldn't let me do it. They kept saying I was lying. I was gonna go to jail if I continued to lie. They kept threatening me with jail time. And once I seen Marvin's face in that courtroom, on that stand, I couldn't lie no more. I couldn't keep going with it. I didn't care if I got locked up. I told the truth, I broke down, I told the truth, and it was that. And the judge made me not come to court no more.
None of the kids had their parents present. None of the children who testified against Marvin. Since I have been doing Marvin's movement, 2 families, not the actual people that testified, but sisters, called me with tears in their eyes. I'm so sorry. We know that your brother didn't do that. My parents wasn't home when they took my brother. What can we do to help Marvin? Right?
Yep.
Shit, I feel terrible because I know he didn't do it. I know he's innocent. I know I was coerced into doing this. I know it was made up. This is not something I'm just saying because this is my cousin. This is not something I'm just saying. This is real life. This is something I had to live with for years. It's another world besides this world where this correctional facility shit. It's a world outside of it where people deal with people in certain situations for certain things. I had to deal with that my whole life, all these years. This is my blood cousin we talking about. Not no friend, not no homie. This is somebody I love, who I grew up with. Mothers and sisters. You know what I'm saying? This is my man's. And he's been in there all these years for something he did not do. Off of a statement they coerced me into saying. Something made up. Why? I don't know. Why? I always question that. Why? Why was it? It was him picked. Why was it me? You know what I mean? So it's like, I deal with this shit all the time, still to this day. People saying I told on my cousin. But how can you tell on a man who's innocent?
That kind of thing that goes on in courtrooms, and I've seen it many times, it should never be allowed to happen. You can't have witnesses that get coached in the middle of their testimony. That's just not acceptable.
The facts don't line up and the evidence doesn't line up. Well, the evidence lines up for him not being there. That's even what the state said at their appeal and at their trial, and then Marvin's appeal for that trial. They said there's no physical evidence. No physical evidence.
Nothing lined up to the story that they told on what Marvin's supposed to did.
This isn't just us saying it. There's actual evidence behind. There's questions about how this investigation was even conducted.
You know, one of the things that also was happening during this time is that, you know, there was little attention being paid to things like Brady violations or things like that, things where, you know, cops could just be blatant liars. There was no expectation that they would do a legitimate investigation, one that could possibly clear the people that they were targeting. There was no expectations for that. It was really more like they decided who they wanted and they just did it, and you know, exculpatory evidence be damned, you know, that sort of thing.
And so when we got through trial, they gave him 38 years with some more years on top of that. But since then, Minnesota has the new law where juveniles can't get life sentence, but they never came back to recorrect Marvin's sentence.
The mentality that was going on at that time period was just literally, you know, we've got to do something about this street crime and we don't give a damn who did it. We're just going to lock up all these guys. So we had a situation where we had Mike Freeman was a prosecutor, then Amy Klobuchar took over as prosecutor, and then went back to Mike Freeman again. And during that time period, there was an enormous amount of, like, you know, sort of in the media and things like that, pressure to put people away for all of these murders. And so what we saw was just a real kind of wholesale effort to not even find out who did it, but just to get somebody sort of prosecuted for these things and to get them into the prison system. During that time period, the state prisons in this state became the blackest places in the entire state. The prison population of people of color increased by over 300% during that time period. So this was like almost like the conveyor belt school to prison pipeline thing. Yeah, this was like a street to prison pipeline thing going on, like a conveyor belt of black men just being sent to the prison system. And it was almost as if it didn't matter whether you were innocent, you weren't going to get, it wouldn't matter what kind of defense you tried to mount or anything, you weren't going to be able to get yourself out of that because they were going to put somebody away for those different crimes because they needed to sort of calm down the white populace, the rich folk and the news media and so forth. So they needed to look like they were acting swiftly, and a lot of times without any attention to who actually committed the crimes and with no attention to people's rights or anything. And they just took a whole generation of young black men and threw them off into the prison system.
Every young black man, or woman for that matter, could be automatically assumed that they were a guilty suspect instead of giving the benefit of the doubt and really looking into the case. A lot of times the pressure just to solve homicide cases would push cops to get false confessions, wrongful identifications of the person as the actual suspect when they weren't. And Minneapolis police are deeply racist. It's embedded in the culture of the department that policing in Minneapolis is basically policing the communities of color, not policing the white communities of Minneapolis.
So when a white prominent person is killed in the community, there's huge pressure against the police to, make sure that you solve this crime immediately. We can't have this stuff. They don't really care about, people of color that get killed in the streets in North Minneapolis or whatever. But if it's a white person or whatever, all the stops are out. How the hell do you feel safe when the wrong person gets sent to prison and the person that did it is still running the streets? That's not safety for anybody. It's just dumb. And that's why I keep trying to point out to white folk, because white folks are dumb like that. Man, I'm sorry. It's true. A lot of white folks are dumb. Just make me feel safe. Safety is me feeling safe. No, safety is all of us feeling safe. And so it's, to me, was a horrific situation that took advantage of the youth of these children to allay the fears of white people of street crime. And I put a whole lot of it on Amy Klobuchar and Michael Freeman, because the two of them were the ones that were sending all these kids off to the prison system for the rest of their lives. One of the things I think that bears some thought is what we put people through to prove their innocence once they've been convicted. We make it very, very hard in this system to address the innocence of individuals. We're about a very punitive model in this society, but also we're about in the court system, a model of finality. It's more important to the court for things to be final than to be right. And to admit that we put innocent people away on a murder, for example, means that we did not deal with who actually did that murder. So it means that the police screwed up, and they're gonna have to admit they screwed up. It means the court screwed up. They're gonna have to admit they screwed up. And it means that the person that did this thing got off scot-free, which they don't wanna deal with either. So what we do is we build a lot of barriers into the system to make it very hard and very expensive, frankly, for people to be able to get any kind of measure of innocence. We've had to force this state to reconcile what they've done to some of these young black men, and we're working now to try to get more of these cases looked at. There is something that's happened since then that's called the Conviction Review Unit, the CRU. It's with the Attorney General's office under Keith Ellison. They, I think, have about 23 or so cases in review. They've gotten petitions for, I think, about 150 cases in that ballpark. There's a lot of cases in the Twin Cities that people are asking for some justice for these young men. And this is a good thing. A lot of times it's their families, but there's other people interested as well. And we're trying to kind of work all together because it's part of a broader picture. It's not just this individual and that individual and this individual. We want this whole thing to be looked at because we know what the roots were. And we also want to make sure that nothing ever happens like this again for other people. One thing about these cases is that they are both legal and political. On the one hand, there's all the kind of legal machinations that have to happen and that have happened and so forth. But these are political cases, because when that person was arrested, the first thing that happened is that they were vilified in the media. They were totally portrayed as murderers and people that, commit heinous crimes and things like that. Their reputations were totally destroyed. Whether or not they had actually committed the crime, their reputations already made it as if they had. And so trying to defend these folks has to include that political element of saying, wait a minute, here's all the wrongs the system did, but also this person just plain didn't do it, and you slandered them, you defamed them, you ruined their reputation so they could never get a fair trial. You wouldn't be able to get a fair trial under those circumstances. And people in the community no longer trust you or care whether you got a fair trial or not. It's very hard to get people to care about these cases because, again, these people were depicted in the media as monsters, and people remember that. And, anything good you can put in behind those people kind of goes by the wayside. These are tough battles.
They took him as a kid, and every day of his life he has been around grown men and has had to protect himself from many situations, his mental, his body, and his soul.
He's done a good job at that, because his passion when he gets out is he wants to make a difference in the community. He wants to prevent this from happening to other people and mentor people. And that right there shows who he is. He knows he's innocent, and he knows eventually this stuff will come out. And he's working to be patient as we're working on it. But that's his passion, is when he gets out, he wants to go help people.
I don't even know how you live through something like that. That these youth are now pushing back and saying, hey, wait a minute. You're not going to forget about me. You're going to address this because you did it wrong back then. And, society allowed these prosecutors to get away with doing these wrongs. And now we have to come back and address that. And I think that Mr. Haynes has a very good argument for his factual innocence. I really do.
Free Young Money, man. He innocent.